God, I love our music.
Can't talk. What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Nashville Unsigned podcast. We're back covering all things digital and music news and resources in the independent community. I am straight chilling with my business partners, Nick Brown.
What's up, everybody?
What do you do, Nick?
I actually make sure the website's up, available, and you can go register at nashvilleinsigned.com/register.
Holla! Website pimping. I'm Amber Stoneman, networking and social media guru.
I'm Jared Rigsby, writer, web guy, SEO, marketing,
Pimp.
different stuff.
Yeah, and I'm Patrick Larney, and it's making things look good.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's real good.
So Nashville Unsigned, of course, is your go-to for all things independence. We are a one-stop shop for digital magazine, label services, live events, and home of the largest number one independent community in the city.
Largest and number one.
We are number one.
I love checking that thing out. Just seeing what people upload, the music, and everything. It's very awesome.
Yeah.
Join the movement. Hashtag. Please. Get on over to YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Search the news on, no, not the news.
The Nashville Unsigned podcast.
Nashville Unsigned. How can I not get this right every single
muscle
time?
memory.
It's literally every time.
Nashville Unsigned podcast on Apple Music. Where else are we? We're SoundCloud.
SoundCloud. You can check
We're
out
on
SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Somebody get us on Spotify.
Yeah, we got a playlist. Keep it updated. Very good.
So, and then shout out to Nino for our beautiful theme music.
Of course. Thank you, man.
Pull over that ass too fat. Pull over that ass too fat. So today we are talking about another question that has been kicked to us via our unsigned community is the difference between why a single is better than an album or vice versa. How do you launch your music? And I think we all have opinions on that today.
Yeah, single,
Singles versus
album,
albums.
EP. Where do I start?
Where do you
No, that's a deep question. I mean, you kind of all
blew our
you
minds,
left us
Nick.
you left us stunned. You left us stunned for a second.
I was
I
over
think-
here like a Nintendo boss. I was like,
I was like, shit, he's about to go into something. Everybody get ready. Strap your seatbelts up. Hang on to your
I
nipples.
think we're pretty much
This is
in
happening.
a consensus that singles come first, yeah? So far? That's what I'm thinking.
I know I'm the only person against this. But,
yeah, okay.
but it's
Let's
the first one.
Well, I'm
let's
going
talk about
singles,
it. Let's
man.
talk about it. Let's
Yeah.
talk about let's talk about singles versus albums.
I think a lot of it comes back to how you record it. You know, because it comes down, you got to record it before you can sell it.
That's true.
Before you can do anything, you got to go into a studio or figure something out and get it recorded. So I think that is one of the determining factors of how you release it. You know, you could do like a slow drip sort of situation, and that could be good.
Yeah.
But I mean, if otherwise you're just holding out on material you've already got.
Yeah, here's the way that
Let's talk about the album first.
Yeah. This is the way that I look at it. And let me first say that I recognize that the market is about touching your audience as much as possible. There's so much competition out there.
Hashtag non-sexual.
Non-sexual.
Gay creepers.
Touch them however you need to.
Come on, George, sing it to me. But here's the way I feel about it. Like, I understand the argument of in today's social atmosphere, you have to put a bowl of milk every single day for the cat to keep coming.
Right.
And I understand that, right? But to me, I think that it really kind of depends on the genre. Because you have to think about like what you're producing. If you're producing something that's inbox, the new age of EDM or pop or whatever, when you're inspired,
Just make
lay the song down while you're inspired and put it out.
That's true.
But when you're talking about things like Americana or country or something like that, you're talking about getting real life elite musicians into a studio.
Yeah.
It is not fiscally even remotely possible to record a single at a time.
That's an interesting angle.
It's not. If you get one of the best drummers in the world, one of the best guitar players, one of the best bass players, one of the best fiddle players, or something like that, to playing actual analog instruments to come into a studio, you're going to pay them a day rate. And for a drummer to lay down one song and then to leave, It's just not fiscally.
Yep.
So what about
what would
in
happen
the
is they
other-
would come in and they would record like a couple of the records that I just recently produced. We would do 4 and or 5 songs a day with the rhythm section.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So now you've got 5 songs. It makes more sense to spend 2 days in a studio and record them all. Now, some people would say, okay, just release them a single at a time, and that I will listen to that argument.
Yeah.
But as far as the recording process is concerned, there's a reason why vinyl has come back. The way that I believe is because there's a tangible collection of songs that all lend themselves to a very specific content message. And when you are releasing a single and then a single and a single and a single, I think it's more squirrely, if you will, than a collection of songs that all point to a single purpose. Now, with that said, I think that, I'm sorry I'm talking a lot. I just have a lot to say.
We're like, come on.
Because here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen.
Welcome to the Patrick Larney Show.
Yeah, I'm going to present why an album is important, and the rest of the show is going to be
and
singles.
then we are
so
going
I'm going to take my time.
I
lay
see what
down
you're
some
saying.
analytics and some statistics
Exactly.
So
on
it
why
goes back
this
to the
may not
production.
be the most
It goes back to the production and production costs. I mean, I just think what is responsible. And like I said, you could still release them a single at a time.
Yeah.
But I also believe that like putting out a collection of songs that all kind of point to the same purpose. If you're a new artist in one of these genres like Americana or country or whatever, you have to establish your foundation.
Yeah,
And your
it's more
foundation is not going to
experiential.
happen with a single.
Yeah.
You have to say, hey, listen, these are the things that I stand for, but not something that I stood for on Tuesday and recorded it and put it out. This is something that I stood for a year.
It's a better insight into what you're about than just one song.
Exactly. And then from that point forward, once people understand your brand and you have your foundation set, then release singles forever.
I think-
but you kind of have to have that establishment
I agree.
of this is who I am as a body of
Yeah.
work, and then you can move forward from there.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
go for it.
What about like if you had unsigned musicians? Like you talk about like studio musicians in a really expensive studio, but isn't there a way to do that? Like
There is a way to do that.
like do that with
Very
musicians
effective way to do that.
I mean, because we all know tons of musicians who don't necessarily do it professionally. Like, saying goes in Nashville, we're talking about talent's a dime a dozen. And there's a lot more people who aren't getting work that are totally talented at it.
My
They
experience
still
with
pay
that-
them, but like maybe not as much as someone who
Yeah, you
has
just work
like
a different
the,
deal.
The economic, there's an economic advantage.
My
to be like, I'm a
experience with
professional.
that is if I work with an artist that has not been a studio musician for years and years and years, when time is money. Everybody knows that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If they do 4 takes,
Yeah.
it's which one did they play clean enough?
Okay.
Whereas if you put somebody who's been doing studio musician for 20 years, it's 4 options. Which one do you want?
Yeah, you want a pro
It's very,
or
very,
not?
very. It's very, very different. There's a
Yeah.
level of like, and I'm not talking
level
about
of
like
professionalism.
Keith Urban
Yeah.
is an amazing guitarist. He's not a studio musician.
Yeah.
Like studio musicians are like leaps and bounds above. Now, when you get down to something like, a Cercina or somebody who's working inside of the box where they can quantitate beats.
Yeah.
So it's not like the drummer has to be completely on time. It's literally
Right.
a mathematical certainty when you plug it into this program.
more like,
that's a totally different genre.
Yeah.
And some of these guys, some of these producers
So
are
depending on
amazing.
the genre, really.
In 2 days, they can make you a single.
I think the
and you can release
compromise
single.
is finding these folks that are just getting
Yeah, I think but we got to remember who we're talking to. So we're talking to an independent artist, and so the thing is like, for there are a very small amount of independent artists that would be able to afford that. So when we're pointing back to our demographic, so with an album, I do think collectively it's cheaper. So you're getting a collection of songs, and you're working with one producer, typically, that's helping you create a streamlined, cohesive story. Now, if you're working with multiple producers, you may not get the same story all the way across the board. So with an album, I do think that is the case. But I think that like an album is still like, you can find independent musicians that would do that on a cheaper budget, that actually, just because they're independent doesn't mean they're not as good as the 30-year tenured vet musician, the studio musician. That's what we kind of rally behind, is the independent. So not just the independent artist, but the independent musician that's also a badass biatch, in the studio. So it's possible to find that. I don't think that's what's happening on the scene, though. If we were to like sit back back and be like, what's happening on the independent scene? It's not studio musicians. It is singles and it's bands. Like, it's rare that we see just an artist. Typically they have their own band or they're in a band that stays with them, like Tiger Drive, for instance. And I know we referenced them on another podcast, but they do everything in-house. They do everything in-house. They don't have to hire anybody else. They can release singles all the time. But then we go into the pros of releasing singles. And of course, when we're talking to independent musicians, no major label musicians, you're working with a low budget. We know that. We know what your average income is $35,000 a year. Like, we understand that. And so we know that you're working on a low budget. I think that a single allows you to be agile. And what that is in apps, they use a methodology called Agile methodology. And what that means is you execute something and you test it, execute, test. So the thing is, I think with an album, it's kind of an old school way of looking at it, because technology and music is changing so rapidly. We're consuming music like it's oxygen right now. So it's changing so rapidly. 12 songs, and you release a song a month, your 12th song may not be as relevant as your 6-month song was. And that's because it's evolving so quickly. And yet it does depend on your genre.
Yeah, I think that what you were saying.
But I think agile. I think you have to be agile in today's music industry.
To be successful as an independent musician, which is to say that you're an entrepreneur. And when you're an entrepreneur, you need to be a professional pivoter. And so I totally understand the argument for the single, because it's like, put this out. If it fails, okay.
Pivot.
You know what I mean? And if it doesn't, if it's successful, then let's do that again. And I totally agree with that.
And that's what Agile is saying is be malleable, be able to move if you want to be able to move. And that's with technology too. They say that's the new age way of developing apps, is to be able to test each iteration as you move along, so you can alter the app in the process of actually building it. Just like an artist, you can alter things that are working and that are not working based on analytics. If you're not super committing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to a 12-song album that you may not even be relevant with in 6 months.
But depending on, one of the people that I think that is really dancing the line of this whole thing, that's mixing the two, is John Mayer. He's in the middle of a tour for an entire record, and he's just like, you know what? I recorded this single called New Light.
Right.
It's totally different than anything else that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Screw it. I'm going to release a single in the middle of my album.
But you got to think about
what
the consumer.
Badass to think that he can just mix the two.
Well, he knew what the consumer is digesting. What is the consumer digesting? They're wanting to digest more and more music, and they're wanting to digest things that are different. And so with John Mayer, I think that's what that is he's acknowledging people want something different.
And this is the section that we call a
Casey's Corner.
Producer
Casey's
Casey here. Let me get
Casey's
that right.
Stripper
Producer
Corner.
Casey here. Now, as an unapologetic John Mayer fan, I know a hell of a lot about him and his business strategy. And I realized last year when he started putting out his Love, he released the first song, Love on the Weekend. His latest album, he released 4 songs at a time each month.
Brilliant, by the way.
Yep.
Which is, and if you want to talk about the cutting edge of distribution of music, John Mayer is figuring it out, and he's a perfect case study for it. He released those 4 songs. Every time he released 12 songs
and he called
total.
them waves.
And he called them
and he recorded them all at the same time. But I will say this: the first person in major music to do that was actually
Kanye West.
No,
Good Fridays.
Jason Mraz.
Kanye West.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Jason Mraz released a thing where he had 4 different. He recorded an entire album, but instead of releasing 12 songs, he released 3 at a time. And basically said, I don't remember what it was, we live, we love, we laugh, or some crazy shit.
Something that would be on the kitchen wall.
Exactly.
In a nice studio apartment.
Something that you can find at
on a
Hobby
canvas.
Lobby.
Yeah.
Big
You know what I mean?
At
Canvas.
home.
But anyway,
This
that
show's brought to you
made
by
a lot of
At Home.
sense, because he was basically doing the bowl of milk and the cat thing, but he was doing it after he had recorded, financially had recorded an entire record, and then was releasing them pieces at a time.
But that requires you to have a marketing strategy together before you ever even step foot in the studio. And a lot of the independent community doesn't have that together. Like
For sure.
For instance,
Especially newcomers.
I know somebody that
I
did
love
it
that
really well.
strategy, though. I
Class
love how you did
2
that.
Sinclair launched like Barcelona sometimes, and so these were singles, 3 to 4 singles. And then she made sure the cover art was cohesive.
Right, as
And
a collection.
within the marketing strategy for that rollout. So I do think, again, I'm going to go back to like singles. It's the way to go. And if we're talking to the independent community, because we know that's who we're talking to, we know that fits in your budget. It's fresh. It keeps things fresh. It keeps you relevant.
I like the creativity aspect.
And
to
you
it.
had a really good point around psychology.
Yeah.
So drop
Yeah,
that.
there's like-
drop that shit right now.
psychology. Well, it
Boom.
triggers your creativity because it's like I don't want to say instant gratification, right? Because you're doing work in the studio and you need to perfect something and actually do a good job for anyone to care about it. But once you get that like reward, that feedback, and you did something and it worked out, like to some degree, to any degree, that just fuels you, like, and as far as like inspiration and creativity, right? And maybe you can kind of like do it on like a budget, and you're like, oh, I made some money back, and then I can produce this. I can
Recycle it,
bring someone in, I can build from there and do this cycle, and it stays exciting for you. And for a creative angle, you need to be excited about your
And
project.
I think that pop music, like pop, is short for popular.
Right, and whatever
Right,
you
and so-
can create. I mean,
Right.
when you
So
talk
I
about
think it's when
bands
you
and like
get
pop,
into it and you're pivoting and saying, hey, this is what the public likes every day. That's one thing. When you're talking about country music or Americana.
Rock
blues,
pivots like that though.
Yeah.
So
I just think that there's
Rock
something to be
pivots
said
like
for, you know what? Like,
Yeah.
screw what the future thinks. This is my vision, and I'm going to put out 12 of these songs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just say I'm
Yeah, I agree.
committed
Well,
then
to
you
a
have
body of work.
Yeah, you have to
There's something
understand that
about
you're
that,
gonna
right? I mean-
you're
I like
gonna
that format too. But
Yeah.
like,
you're gonna lose
you have a
content that way.
story
You're gonna
format.
push it out, and you're just not going. The dollar amount you spent on the content on the hour is not gonna. It's not going to equivalate in views or reach that it should.
what do you guys
Because
think about like a material like you mentioned vinyl or something like that? Like
Well, that's
vinyl
a-
or like a CD.
Right, and
Do you
that's
think
I
that
guess
there's
what I'm
still
talking
an
about
audience
as
for
far as
that?
collection. Like, I have just done the
'Cause I think of,
editing,
like, a
editing
story
for
in an album.
one of our latest Nashville Unsigned alumni named Bishop Gunn, and they just put out, was it a 8-song EP or something
Yeah.
like
That's
that? And they recorded that EP in 3 different studios,
Yeah.
which was Fame, Muscle Shoals,
Muscle
and
Shoals sounds.
Purple something. I can't
Refer to our interview.
yeah,
You guys
check
can
out
find that on
the
YouTube.
Bishop Gunn interview.
trying to remember that.
But anyway, 3 different studios they recorded these songs in, and like they were kind of talking about how like they wanted to make sure that the vision was kind of collective though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of a challenge for them because they were bouncing between studios.
Right.
Now, there's 2 solutions to that. Number one, you stay in one studio and record an entire body of work, or like in the single age, sure, record them and release them separately, right? You can kind of move between them. Now, Cersina, she's what class is it?
Class 2, but she did the single release and then rolled out to an EP,
Right, and then roll out to an EP.
and then Whistle did
And
too.
From what I've
yeah.
heard
You can always roll out to an
from
EP.
Molly is that that Molly really wants to right now. The next thing she wants to do is release an entire body of work. She wants to release 12 songs.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's something about like. Take from Beyonce and like her
Yeah.
like video albums. Like every once in a while, it might be cool to just like drop a bomb of like
Totally.
a shit ton
Here's
of
what I say:
content,
invest,
especially if you're a
invest
prolific
in something
songwriter.
different. Invest in something different. Invest in a video. You're going to get a lot more content. You're going to get a lot more views. You're going to get a lot more reach in video content in all platforms. So, I again disagree. I don't think that you should do a full body of work. If you are a brand new artist, you need to build your catalog. You probably do need to come out of the gate with something like that. But if you are marketing, do not you can still record an entire body of work and roll one song out at a time. You can still do that. You may not be relevant on the 12th song, but you can still do that. I do think that you have to tandem a video, whether it's a live stream, whether it's an acoustic video, whether it's a full-on music video, or it's a friggin' audio video. You've got to have something. It could be an animation like Ren from Class 5 did. So I do think that if your single isn't tandem to a video, you are going to almost toss your content out and just be like, well, shit, that's not going to get anything. You know, like you're charging it to the game, really. But I think that it should be, if we're giving you an effective schedule or an effective way to execute things, if you're not rolling out things every 2 weeks, then you probably should be rolling out something every 2 weeks, whether it's a video, whether it's a single, or an audio video.
See, the thing is, I like to break it down to like dollars. You know, so it's
Don't
like
make dollars, it don't make sense.
So one thing I do want to, to bring up is like, how many millions of views have you got to get? Because I mean, like, if you do have an actual CD, like a physical copy, like you would need like an album or at least an EP.
You'll need a CD player for
more
that.
More than just a single, really, to have a physical CD to merit selling. Not even considering digital downloads, but I mean, the profit margin on a CD compared to the number of streams and downloads that you would require to meet that, it's a lot. So I think one thing to consider is the realistic. It's like, when you put this out there, how many millions of views do you really need?
I mean, I actually agree with you. And here's one of the things that I've found. It's no secret that I manage the Young Fables. Our best sales are vinyl.
Yeah, I can see
in
that.
this vinyl age.
It's merch.
Totally, yeah.
There's no possible way that you could do vinyl on a single. It is so expensive.
Yeah.
You have to have a body of work.
People are doing that as merch for sure.
So I guess it depends on how you're coming at it.
I think it's
What your
genre. I think it's genre.
is,
Yeah.
how you're coming
really
at
right
everything.
now.
Because I just think totally
Americana and country is just not caught up with the rest of the world. Let's be honest, we're way behind.
Yeah, I think that
Well, they're story focused, and I think when you have an album, a long form like medium like that, it tells a story.
Yeah,
and I see, especially
but we're
the
in
Americana
an
country.
ADD. Again, we have to know
There's a lot of
who's
DJs
consuming
and
it,
rappers
who's
and-
consuming it, and like in a millennial Gen Z environment that's consuming music more than any other generation, what does their personalities look like? Their personalities look like ADD.
Yeah, squirrel.
Like, it's super squirrely.
Squirrel town.
So again. And if I were giving personal advice to the independent community, I would say, take your budget, be very strategic with it. I wouldn't drop it on an entire body of work. I would drop it on. I would stretch your revenue streams across like 4 different revenue streams.
I think if you're especially new, if you're new, you need to get your feet wet. Maybe make a single
Merch,
and go with it.
Single, video. Like there's a lot of content that you can create that can make you money. And I would say do that first, and you don't need a body of work until you're deeper into the realm, until you know more of your sound too.
I agree. I think like until you figure out what works.
I
Like
think
this
singles are great promotion.
It's marketing.
Single
You got to stop looking at your music as being a moneymaker, because it's not. And if you look at it as being a marketing tool, and you're figuring out revenue streams without that, and you just look at that as being extra money, I think you build a better, stronger, more sustainable career that can move into any realm and not just have to be tandem to music.
It's the perfect thing to share for a band on social media.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
honestly,
music, here it
that is the epitome
Yeah.
of what you could be sharing on there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's perfect promotion in that regard.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, I really think that not to bring it back to being a total Mayer lover, but
That's okay. We'll
the
accept you.
idea of blending full record collections and also singles in the mix keeps people on their toes.
Yeah,
man.
definitely.
I think that's really amazing.
Totally.
And I think that,
Especially in
I think for
upper
100%, I
echelon,
think that the future is totally
Is singles.
hold your stuff and roll singles out.
Well,
I'm not
here's
stupid enough to act.
Well,
like, I
Spotify
don't think that's what
playlist
it is.
doesn't function off of album playlists. They function off of single playlists. So what is hot in music right now? It's Spotify playlists. And they're not putting entire albums on their playlists. They're
Seems
just
like
putting
it
singles.
would cater to your core fans.
Yeah.
You know, like
That's what my notes say. It says you build a more loyal fan base faster by rolling out singles.
Because if I love a band, I want more updates.
Right.
Yeah.
As frequently as possible.
Kinda like
please.
feed it out
You know.
Just want
slowly.
to consume it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just want to consume it. But yeah, I think that there is even a psychological aspect of creating a routine of work. If you think about a salesperson works really hard and then they land the sale. And then that's the reward from the work on the front end. And so the same thing with rolling out singles constantly is it's like, here's my work, here's the repercussions of my work. Here's my work, repercussions, work, repercussions. So you're building this cycle,
Yeah, I
this
personally like that
strategy, this
cycle.
routine psychologically of rolling things out every 2 weeks to a month. Again, based on the single aspect of things, but then you're just creating this behavior in yourself where you are rolling things out consistently and it's new and you're building a relationship with your fans that says that you're always on the forefront of newness, you know? So
Then put it
that's
on
my story and
Instagram.
I'm sticking to it. I'm sticking to it.
Post it on Instagram or something.
That's what I'm saying.
Check out their Instagram
That's what I'm saying.
episode.
But yeah, I do see both aspects though. I do see the storytelling aspect of it and how it's like an author of a book is not going to write one chapter and give the book to somebody else and allow them to write another chapter, although that would be a cool book and
Might be
cool
onto something there.
perspectives.
Might be onto something there.
Nobody better be stealing that.
Releasing books one chapter at a time.
Oh, boy.
I like it.
Uh-oh.
boy.
It's like the new
Netflix
age. Yeah,
that
you're
shit.
welcome.
Yeah.
That was free,
You know what I
guys.
mean?
That was
Wait
free.
till
That was
next
free.
week. This is some
Like
J.J.
episodic.
Abrams.
It'd be like an
That's some
NPR
New
show or
age
something.
shit, man. New age shit. You're welcome.
This week we're in Africa. We have the 23rd chapter of the never-ending story for real.
I kind of like it.
The
So-
never-ending story for real.
let's run through and let's vote on if we are going single or album and give like your final like hoorah selling
The
points.
final say.
Yeah, you sell to that camera right there.
What side are we starting on?
Your side.
Yeah. She's looking at you.
Look at you.
All right. Well, I think you're going to end up making more money by selling physical product. So that would be your CDs. And if you got it, go with getting some vinyl. You know what I mean? Like what Patrick was saying. You know, they want something physical if they're going to give you some money. And then second of all, I'd like to say that singles are perfect for promotion. So just take into consideration how many millions of streams you would require to be the equivalent of you selling a CD for $5 to $10.
I have to say music is your marketing tool. This is how you're going to market your brand, your empire. This is how Jay-Z marketed himself. It wasn't his music marketing. It was marketing him, and he blew up to this like empire of doing a ton of different things. So I think your music is marketing. Stop banking on that to be your livelihood and your income. Build an empire of where you have multiple revenue streams that doesn't have to bank on your music. So
I say do what feels good. If a single, if a single gets you started and gets you like primed to make more music, and you're like, man, I'm that Americana band that has a story to tell. And I just like feel really fresh off this. You know, I got some momentum. I have some experience. Then go for that album.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say, man, like, I really honestly, I mean, this is such a freaking cop out, man, but I really believe it's a combination of both, and here's the reason why.
Well, that's what I think we said.
And here's the reason.
we got a
I'm
couple
with you.
different
Ultimate
generations
centrist
sitting at
coming
this
in.
table.
If you're
Record an album and use it as promotion.
What is your inspiration, right? If you are as a prolific songwriter as that something is just really driving you that you can release 10 songs at a time, freaking do it. You know what I mean? But if you're in the middle of an album and something hits you as an inspiration, then John Mayer it and put your singer out right in the middle of your album release.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah.
I just think if you're that prolific of a songwriter and you're writing that much that all points to the same message, collect them, put them together, and put it out. And I also think that like every artist out there, and this is just my opinion, and not everybody in the world has to agree with me, but I feel like if you are an artist, you should at least have one body of work that is your foundation, and then from that point forward, launch singles.
If you
all
don't
year.
have a marketing, you gotta have a marketing strategy for everything. Like if you do have a body of work, you have to have a super strategic rollout strategy. If you don't, then you need to hire somebody. You're in the wrong realm.
Yeah.
Do not release anything until you hire somebody. But again, I just think to be able to stay agile, you can't
Gotta
be
keep it
committed.
agile.
You can't be
Gotta do
committed
your
to 12
sprints.
songs. But guys, we love you guys, but this is it. We're giving too many secrets away, and we can't give you everything in one setting. Download
Well, we
this
can.
episode. Subscribe to
by
Nashville
piece.
Unsigned podcast on Apple Music, Google, SoundCloud. Get us on Spotify. We love you guys. Come to our live events. Thank you, and We're out.
Catch you later.